around 20 years ago in my country, and I think most of it still is happening today. When politicians and experts talk about immigration, they don't talk about it in the general sense, but they talk about it from where? Because obviously, an immigrant which is coming from Japan is going to be behaving differently and is going to have a different culture and attitude than someone that's coming from Moldavia or someone that's coming from Russia. So when talking about immigration, they won't just talk about the nationalities and the countries where the people would come from, but they would also ask, like, what is the education of the person? Is it a university graduate? Is it someone that just finished high school? Is it a completely uneducated person? Why do they want to come here? Do they want to come here because they've fallen in love with the Romanian significant other? Are they coming here because they absolutely love our culture and they want to integrate? Or are they coming here because they're persecuted in their home country and this is the first safe space that they landed on? Like, all of these questions were important and significant in order to talk about immigration. However, now, especially when you look at the United States or you look at Germany, immigration is viewed like a force of nature. There is no stopping it, and even suggesting to stop it makes you a far right bigot. It doesn't really matter the people, where they're coming from, how they're coming from. It doesn't even matter if you can check them at the border, if they're smuggling goods, or if they're bringing anything illegal, or if they have an international warrant on their name. Like, even raising these questions is viewed as problematic. The correct thing to do with immigration is to just allow literally everyone in, and once they are here, we're going to deal with them. Usually by suppressing the local population, but by having strong hate speech laws, by punishing any type of dissent, especially the one that is directed at the politicians that are facilitating the immigration. And this is obviously causing a lot of social friction. And this is one of the reasons why many right-wing populist groups are rising in the European Union, and it's why the European Union is struggling hard in order to crack down on these groups that are trying to take away their politicians' seats of power. So the interesting thing is when you ask, like, why is this a thing? Like, how was it even sold to the public to begin with? And the idea was of economic prosperity. You see, for a while, the way that people would think about their golden years was to have many children. Because if you didn't have many children, then you would die alone and poorly dressed. I mean, think about it. If you exist in a world where there is no pension, there's no social security, there's no welfare, when you get old, you can't work. And the moment you can't work, like, how are you going to eat? What are you going to do for food? How are you going to pay rent? And the answer was, well, if you're lucky, charity. If not, you're going to end up on the streets. So people needed to have many kids. People needed to have 6, 7 kids who would get their own jobs. They would get their own spouses and families and leave the nest that they grew up in. And then when you're old, you're hoping that those kids will take care of you just like you took care of them. And in exchange, those kids you're going to have the grandchildren that will take care of your kids when they are old, and so on and so forth. But that system has been discarded, and in favor, we now have welfare. So welfare means that everyone pays to the government, and the government becomes the father. The government becomes the provider. The government will take care of you when you're old. So the idea is that some families that do not want to have children don't have to have children, because when they're going to grow old, they're going to get their pensions and social security from the government. The problem is that if most people decide this, if most people think that, well, I'm not going to have kids, I'm going to have the government take care of me, the government realizes that it can't actually produce or generate wealth. And if it can't produce or generate wealth, it has to take wealth from someone else. And if you have an aging population because people didn't have kids, then the people that are old, they're not really the ones producing. In fact, they're the ones consuming. They're consuming healthcare, they're consuming their pensions that they deserve, and they're also not actively stimulating the economy. People at the age of 80, 85, they do not go clubbing, they do not buy the brand new television sets, they're not consuming the same way as the younger generation. So the governments in the European Union, they panicked and they realized, oh, well, we need immigrants then. If we can't have children from our countries, we're going to take someone else's children here. And this is how the refugee crisis started. What I found interesting is that if you put a picture of a dead body of a dead child and you upload it on social media or on the newspaper, it will get immediately taken down. In fact, the European Union demanded that Elon Musk takes down violent content from Twitter, portraying the Israeli and Hamas terror attacks which took place last year. Even though that content was legal and it was graphic, the European Union demanded to be taken down. However, the European Union did not demand to take down the picture that everyone saw, and it's still available on the internet today, with the dead child on the beaches of Greece, which started the whole mass immigration into Europe. So now the whole idea, the whole morality is that if you're a good, decent person, if you're a person with European values, or if you're a person that's a decent American in the corporate establishment, you must be in favor of immigration. There is no way around it. You can't talk anything bad about it, especially not about the politicians that are pushing for it. This is what good people do. This is their values, right? So liberty isn't a value anymore. In fact, liberty is dangerous because people can talk shit on the internet. So the correct thing is diversity, equity, inclusion. So it wasn't weird when you saw the American president say that Japan is xenophobic for not wanting to have immigrants, because Japan happens to be in the same problem that the European Union was 20 years ago. They're having declining birth rates. People don't want to have kids. So the problem is with the economy, with the welfare, and all of the other things that follow. Now, normally, you shouldn't talk like this to an ally, especially an Asian ally, which have a lot of emphasis on diplomacy, on honor, basically insulting the entire country by calling them xenophobic for not wanting immigration, because obviously there is no other reason. Like, there is no possible reason on why you wouldn't want immigration, especially when I, from Romania, am looking at how many Romanians have left the country. So Romania doesn't have a problem with immigration, we have a problem with emigration. A lot of our young doctors, a lot of our young engineers, a lot of our bright people are constantly leaving the country, which is going to raise the question, who's going to pay my pension when I grow old, right? So like this in itself would be an argument against immigration, but it is not accepted because everything that's against this concept must be because of bigotry, xenophobia, and everything else, right? So you do have an answer from a right-wing politician, the Sansei party leader, Sohei Kamiya, which basically says that, no, we're not xenophobic, we just look at what you are doing, we're noticing your mistakes, and we're being careful. So you can see just how diplomatic Asian countries are, especially Japan. And what's interesting is that he doesn't speak incorrectly. Like, if you look at New York, which is a sanctuary city and has benefited recently from a lot of new arrivals, I don't know if it's particularly due to this or for whatever reason, but New York has deployed its own fucking military in the subway. Like, you have the National Guard deployed in the New York City subway. Like, this is not normal. This is not okay. In fact, if it was to happen in my country, people would have been absolutely bewildered and shocked. It's like, what do you mean? Like, is the crime level at this high? Like, normally you would have the police patrolling the subway, or you could have the military patrolling the subway as a, aesthetic, if you will, right? Like, you're a country that's proud of its military, so you have like a couple of soldiers wearing the uniforms of the country with their flag and everything like that. Like, for example, in the United Kingdom, you have the Royal Guard, right? So you could say that, okay, well, that's one thing. But in New York, that's definitely not the case. Like, there is actual danger with traveling in the subway. There have been people that were murdered in the subway for no reason whatsoever. And you gotta wonder, is that something desirable? Is that something that should be addressed? Is that something that's up for conversation or debate? And even the politicians in Chicago, New York, and other places that are sanctuary cities are starting to sound more and more like Donald Trump, saying that, well, this is a strain on our infrastructure, it's a strain on our resources, this is problematic. But apparently no, apparently they must be xenophobic as well. And this is the conversation that's happening in 2024. Now what's interesting is that I don't see debates on it on television. Like, have you guys seen debates on American media? Like, legit question. Have you seen debates from the authoritative sources where you have a right-winger that's for less immigration and you have a left-wing person that's for? And just have the debate and exchange ideas and exchange topics. I have not seen that. Like, that just doesn't exist. Like, everyone is assumed that you are for immigration until you speak, and then it's revealed you're not. And depending on the type of person you are, if you have a small audience, you're mocked into silence. And if you have a big audience, they pressure to censor and shut down all the dissenting voices. And it's unfortunate, but this is the absolute state of the politics of the world we live in. Let me know what you guys think, though, and as usual, I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.